Hello viewers, welcome back to our YouTube channel, and today we want to kickstart with our tutorials on advanced financial management. That is a paper on level 3, and it is the advanced of financial management paper that is on level 2. So this is what we are going to start on. So I want us to look at the advanced financial management paper, and I want you to note that as you are doing this paper, get prepared that this paper is going to be 80% quantitative analysis, meaning we are going to be looking at dealing with numbers, and that's why you are always forced most of the times to do the QT paper or the qualitative techniques on level 1. The reason is to actually equip you with the knowledge that you will be using in the advanced papers, like for advanced financial management. And the other thing that you need to note is that this paper is also having some theory. It has some theoretical aspects, and some of the theoretical aspects that we have things to do with ethical and governance, corporate governance. We have things to do with Islamic finance. I know Islamic finance is also on level 2 under the financial management paper, but also here we have an advanced of that Islamic finance where we look at, there are very few things that we look at here which you are supposed to use at the same time when you combine the information that you got on financial management, that's on level 2, then you combine with the information that we are going to be getting from level 3, because it is just an advanced aspect of what we cover under financial management on level 2. So we have ethical and corporate governance. We have Islamic finance. Those are some of the theoretical aspects that we have. So the other thing that I want you to note is the fact that this advanced financial management paper has 2 sections. All the paper is divided into 2. We have section A and then section B. And this section A has 1 question. It has only 1 question that is going to be carrying 50 marks. Section B will be having 2, you will be doing 2 questions. They said 3 questions. You select 2, but each is carrying 25 marks. So that's as per the sections that we have under the advanced financial management paper. So, but just know that the theoretical aspects that we have, they are very easy because they are just small things. They are not all that too much, and that's why I was telling you that it is 80% quantitative analysis, meaning we are going to be dealing with numbers, but at the end of the day we are also going to be looking at the theoretical aspects. And these ethical and corporate governance plus Islamic finance, the question may come taking like 8 to 15 marks maximum, and most of the times these questions, the theoretical aspects, they used to happen, or they used to be set, these 2, Islamic finance and then the corporate governance in question 1. So you find that the question 1 is having some computations, but at the end of at the same time, it has some theoretical aspects, and mostly these two, ethical and corporate governance plus Islamic finance, they always, most of the times, if you look at the past paper numbers, you'll be finding them under the question 1. And the marks I have said, they will be taking up to 15 marks maximum, if at all the examiners wanted maybe people to pass, but expect at least 6, 8 to 15 marks in there. So let's look at the structure of the exam. The structure of the exam, the examination structure. We want to look at the detailed analysis of how we expect this paper to be. Now, this paper, as I said, it has 2 sections. We have section A, and also we have section B. Section A is compulsory, and it is carrying 50 marks, as I said. So if you are used of those questions, if maybe you have just come from your level 2, if you're used of those question 1, whereby they only set 1 question but it's allocated 40 marks, just come to this point on level 3. The fact is, this paper has 1 question in section A, but that 1 question is carrying 50 marks. Now, we want to analyze the 50 marks that we have in section A. You'll find that 60% or 70%, it is computational. Let me first remove this section B. 60% computational. We are analyzing section A question paper. So meaning the other 40% is going to be theory. The 40% theory. So even though the question is actually taking 50 marks, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are just going to find numbers alone. Because 60% of 50 marks, you may find that maybe 30 marks are going to be on computations. Then the other remaining 20 or 23, depending, marks, they are going to be theoretical. Now, that is the composition of section A. Don't think it is just computation alone. We have some theory, and I told you most of the times they put Islamic finance and ethical governance. And how we are going to be going into the tutorials, we are going to first look at those 2 theoretical aspects. At least we first get those easy marks. Now, that is section A. Section B has 3 questions. That's what they said. And in those 3 questions, you are supposed to only select 2 questions. Each question is going to be taking 25 marks. So that is the composition of the question. But even within this, just know here, these 2 questions are going to be also taking 50 marks, meaning it is 50-50. Section A 50, then section B also taking 50 marks. But also, these 50 marks of section B, they are also going to be computational and also theoretical, whereby they can set question, let's say question 2, part A, it is computations. Then part B is going to be theory, or it can be part A, part B, and part C, and these are theory. Maybe this one is taking, let's say, 10 marks, then this one is taking 15. Or this one is taking 8, then the other one is taking 17. So it depends on how they have distributed the marks. But what you have to understand is the fact that even in the section B, you are going to find that at least 70% of each question is going to be computational, and then 30% or 40% will be theoretical. So what does that call for? You need to take the theory seriously, because I know with the theory, that's where you can get the easy marks. Now, that is as per the examination structure. That's how the examination is structured. Therefore, you need to be careful with this paper. And the other thing that I need to note is the fact that these papers, this paper, they always, most of the times, they bring scenarios. They bring scenarios. And a scenario can take up to, let's say, two pages, 2 or 1.5. And most of the times, the theoretical aspect that is within this question is going to be answered basing on the scenario or basing on the case they have highlighted. So it's not going to be 100% computational, because after making computations, you have to at least make some analysis. As I said, we are just analyzing. We can analyze the results based on what we've got. That's why you may find the computation number is taking 10 marks, but there maybe part B says advise the company based on the scenario or based on the results that you have computed. So the scenario cases, if you are that person who doesn't actually want to read the passages, who doesn't want to read the scenarios, just get used to it so that you can be able to equip this information from the start. We get it from the inception until we go through the revision. So those are the two things that I wanted to highlight as far as the introduction, part 1 of our advanced financial management paper is concerned. Now, in part 2 of our introduction, I'm going to talk about the examiner's remarks. Like I try to look at the remarks of the examiners to know what the examiners are saying based on the overall performance for different periods, and what are some of the things that the examiner is actually pointing out that are making students not to actually score what they would have scored. So let's meet in the next video as we are looking at the examiner's remarks, and basically, if time allows, we shall also add in something to do with the relevance. How relevant is this advanced financial management paper to the entire qualification of the CPA? How is it relevant, or why was it included? That if someone is to become a certified public accountant, you must have done advanced financial management. We shall look at some of those things. We talked about the first introduction to advanced financial management, and I promised you that when I come back, we are going to look at the examiner's remarks. I call them examiner's remarks because these are basically the things that you need to know. These are like the expectations. The examiner expects you to have this, but you find students have done this. So basically, I'm going to flip it in a bit, in a sense that we start from the expectation, what the examiner expects you to do as far as advanced financial management is concerned, because that's basically what is going to help us improve, because we will be knowing what exactly we are going to do. So we are going to focus on the examiner's expectation, what the examiner expects the student to do. Of course, we look at, these are some of the things, if they are not achieved, then most of the times they lead to the performance not to be a little bit convincing as they expected. So let's first look at the things that we expect, or the examiner expects us to do. So you need one to be a little bit, you need to be able to compute and analyze results. This is very important. You don't just compute. You compute, then you analyze the results that you've gotten from your computations. So by computing and then analyzing, you'll end up trying to recommend some strategies. You can recommend strategies. Remember, I told you the question is basically going to be a little bit on a scenario basis. So you'll find yourself have to explain what the organization can be able to do to embark on the given aspect or the given scenarios that are within the given case that they have presented in the question. So they may give you a case, maybe they may give you a scenario. Let's say they may talk about maybe NSSF. They may not just necessarily call it NSSF. They may bring it in a sense of these schemes, retirement scheme. They give it a different name, but if you look at it, the examples they use in exams, they are supposed to be fictitious, because you are not supposed to present the actual companies, given the fact that you are going to be talking about some of the different aspects that may not be as good as the organization expects you to behave. So in exams, the scenario can be fictitious, but in actual sense, you can actually relate to what the examiner is saying. If let's say they are saying KC retirement fund, of course you can relate it with the NSSF, National Social Security Fund. So that's basically how you will be able to analyze. Don't expect that you are going to have direct examples of the companies that you know, because that's not allowed. Because just imagine I'm talking about a company, let's say I'm talking about Stanbic, and I bring issues to do with money laundering, yet the companies themselves, they are not doing it. So they try to bring fictitious examples, but they are relatable to what is prevailing. So the case maybe it may be about NSSF, and at the end of the day, they want you to recommend a strategy. What can they do to improve whichever scenario they have provided in the question? Or you analyze based on the performance, and you say based on the results that you've got, you recommend ABCD based on the computations that you've done. So you don't simply compute and leave these aspects there. So you have to compute, analyze those results, and then be able to recommend strategies. So here computations, they don't just work. You have to defend your point. The only way you defend your computation is by analyzing. If it is all about ratios, put some comment to analyze what you have computed. Is the company doing well in terms of whatever you have been computing? So those are some of the things that you are going to look at. But most of the times, these questions, they will require you to prepare a report. Most of the, even if it is about ratios, they may tell you to prepare a report on the performance of the company. But they have given you, you are going to compute using ratios. Of course, you compute the ratios, but you state the format. The format is actually taking like 2 marks. It can take 2 depending on the marks that have been allocated there. So the format, but we've seen from our financial management, we know that a report can actually take the memo format as per the exam. But in reality, those 2 aspects are different. But we shall learn more how to prepare a report when you go to the advanced financial. It is more in the integration of knowledge. That's where most of the times you will be preparing reports and they will be in a given format. But here we can take a report as a memo format. So if they ask you to prepare a report and you present it in a memo format, it will be fine. As per the exam, they will mark you right. But it's always good to know those formats, and you'll be able to know what you're supposed to do. So, because most of the times they may ask you to prepare a report, but for you remember only the memo and you don't remember the format of the report. So instead of writing wrong things, you just go by writing the memo format. But when you're doing that integration of knowledge, that's when you'll be learning how to prepare those reports, proper reports. But it's always good to practice and you be able to work into exactly what they have asked. If it is a report, do as, especially when you are practicing. Because these numbers, as I said, it 80% quantitative, so you need to be doing the numbers. The examiner also expects you, the examiner expects you to evaluate investment decisions. Investment decisions that you can invest in. In other words, of course, this is the question that you can't run away from. Because here we look at most of the question 1 is on that investment decision, as it is on the level 2 financial management. So the things that we studied in financial management, they are actually applicable here, especially things to do with investment decision. They are really important as part of the computations as we are going to be looking at them. So you can't avoid this number because it is within the question 1, and we said the question 1 is compulsory, taking 50 marks. So for you to be able to do this number, you have to be knowing all the things that we looked at under the financial management, because the financing options that you are going to be having, you are going to have the money. This money is going to be scarce, so you need to make a decision as the finance manager or the CFO of the organization. You need to make a decision to see which investment opportunities or ideas are viable, so that you can pick them and use the resources that are available to invest in those business ideas that are viable, that are going to add value to the wealth of the organization. So some of those good financing options, you may, for example, if you look at what happened to local construction companies, Oracle had, of course, we know it is a very powerful company, and it has been in that industry of construction for very many years. But we saw recently it was going through financial distress, and the government had to give them money. Of course, they were preferring shares, but you may look at these organizations, but they have investments that they want to make, and those investments, they need a lot of money, of which some of those amounts are not going to be available in the organization itself. So by default, when they look at the investment and they get the money from outside, you have to select which investment you are going to undertake, so that you can be able to maximize the objectives or the wealth of the people, or to be able to pay off, if at all you've gotten a debt finance. So you saw what happened to local. They went through a financial distress, and actually they went to parliament, and the government gave them money. So the examiner may be looking at, if these guys have gotten the money, the question is, which investment activities are they going to be undertaking? Of course, by undertaking those investment ideas, you have to first evaluate them, and that's basically what the examiner expects us to be knowing, that by the time you go for a paper, you must be able to understand how I can evaluate an investment idea, basing on all the methods that we shall look at, plus the new methods that we shall be seeing, which we are not maybe on level 2. So the examiner will be looking at how you can be able to finance some of those investments, because you are not going to be having a lot of resources. The resources are going to be scarce. So we need to see how are you going to evaluate the investment ideas that you are going to invest in with the limited resources that we have at our disposal. So as a finance manager or as a finance analyst, you are going to be advising. One, you may be advising on things to do with financing options, because we, as I said, local went to parliament, but it had an option of going in for debt, like go and borrow loans instead of coming in for preferential shares. I also know that preferential shares are debt, but at least the other one, it depends on the circumstances that were there. If you may find that maybe the company was, maybe it had too much debt in its capital structure, so it couldn't be able to get any other funding from the debt component. And that's why they look at those different financing options and it will be you, the finance analyst or the CFO, to advise on which approach to go with, so that you can be able to raise the finance that are going to help you undertake these investment ideas. So the aspect here is to advise whether you are going to be going in for debt or you are going to go in for equity. And also, you know that by the time you bring in the things to do with the financing, you have also to be careful on whether you are going to be paying dividends. Of course, interest is supposed to be paid. If it is not paid, then it's going to be accruing every period. So the other decision that you are going to be making as a finance manager is to look at, are you going to be able to pay dividend this year based on the different investments? Because you may be having an investment project of, let's say, 10 billion, but you have made profit after tax of, let's say, 5 billion. So the decision will be, the CFO will advise on whether they should pay, because if you are to pay the dividends, then it means you are going to distribute the 5 billion that you've made in profit after tax, and you have to go in for debt to borrow money to finance the investment ideas. So you have to be able to advise, if at all you can be able to come up and tell them that instead of giving these people paying dividends, maybe we just increase their shareholding, bonus shares or rights issue. There are so many ways that you can be able to increase the number of shares these people are holding, but they are also going to remain happy, and the organization is also going to have the money that you are going to use to invest in the different ideas. So this idea of dividends on level 2, it wasn't all that much as we are going to look at it under advanced financial management. It's a very short topic, just small computations. If I understand it, it's a number that you can score 100%, but it has some small computations as we shall look at. So paying dividend is not something that we looked at more in detail as far as level 2 financial management is concerned. But here we talk about dividends, and we go into more details of looking at the Modiglian and Miller and other aspects as we shall look at them. So what I want you to understand is the fact that you are going to, as a CFO, you are going to look at whether you are going to be paying dividends or you are not going to be paying dividends. So as a finance manager, that's a very key thing that you are supposed to look at. So sometimes here the examiner is going to be referring to you as a finance manager or CFO, or sometimes they call them head of finance, depending on the organization. Head of finance, director of finance. But the examiner most of the times can refer to you as a CFO or as a finance manager or a senior finance manager. So it depends on how the examiner, because on level 2, they call you finance managers. But here, you are supposed to be a senior finance manager or a CFO. So that's how we are going to be looking at that that's how the examiner is going to be looking at you. And you have to make decisions on whether you are going to be paying dividends or you are not going to be paying dividends. So, but as I said, dividends is not a big issue here. It is just small, You just need to understand, because the computations are very small and it is very easy to understand. And the approach I use to teach the dividend policy or the dividend topic, it is very easy for you to be able to understand. So just to know that that's a number that you can rely on if at all the examiner brings it, because it is very easy, small computations. We shall be talking about things to do with Modigiran and Miller, the professor of economics. So we shall be focusing on what they published in 1958 and their argument. So their arguments for paying dividends or not paying dividends. Those are the ones that the examiner is going to be interested in. You look at those small computations on how dividends can be paid, then we look at the arguments or the advantages of paying dividends and the disadvantages of not paying dividends. But as they were advanced by the Modigiran and Miller. So the other issue is on ethics and corporate governance, because this is where we are going to be talking about things to do with fraud, things to do with conflict of interest. We are going to be talking about money laundering and other company policies. So you have to note that the examiner expects a professional presentation. A professional presentation calls for very many things. If you are to present the information in a professional way, we expect to have maybe a proper handwriting, presentation, and others. And also you're supposed to attempting the required numbers. Like the questions that are required. They may tell you you're supposed to do, in total there are supposed to be 3 questions. But I said section A has 1 question, section B has 2 questions. You may find a student he doesn't understand maybe section A. You do all the 3 questions in section B. They will not mark them. They will just mark the 2, because the more papers you mark, the more money you get. So you can't waste on doing numbers that are not required. In total, you will be doing, you will find yourself that you have done 3 numbers, but you are supposed to pick 2 in section B, then the other one is compulsory. So you do the required numbers. And maybe to add on my own thinking is you also present the working. Sometimes you may do the things in your head, and you have to make sure that every working is part of how you're going to present your working. That is the presentation, professional presentation. So if they tell you prepare a report, they expect to first have a report first, then the computations, they come last. Sometimes they may not penalize you for starting with the computations, then you end with the report. But professionally, you're supposed to start with the report, then you bring the other computations or workings on the second page. So that's basically some of the key things that you may look at under the presentation of your work. So, attempting the required questions, because when you attempt the required questions, then you are spreading the risk of failing, Because if you do very many numbers as they are required, if the other number you are not able to maximize the marks that are there, then you can be able to spread the risk by having very many numbers that were attempted as required. So that's one way of you easing your passing. You do the required numbers. Sometimes we look at question papers. Maybe part A, you know it very well, part B, you don't know, but you spend more time on part B where you have no idea or you are just writing wrong things. Just do part A, part B, leave a space, go to another number so that you can maximize time. By the time the other, because after all these numbers, you don't actually know them. By the time you are skipping a gap, you will come back maybe when you have done these other numbers for you to be able to manage time. 2, you need to start with the numbers that you are very sure that at least you can maximize. If I'm starting to attempt, we shall look at what are the things, but I gave you guidelines in our financial management paper on how you will be able to make sure that you balance your numbers very well. You start with what you know, and you are sure that at least I can get 15 or 20 or 25 before you look at other numbers. Now, the last part that I want to talk about as far as the examiner's expectations are concerned, you are also required to report on modern issues. Report on modern issues in financial management. And that's why you are seeing every time they keep on changing the syllabus, because they are bringing in new things. So the new things that we have, they are things to do with Islamic finance. Is something new. It has been here, but it is something new. Practicability in Uganda, something new. They have also introduced, as per the paper, they have also brought in these other things of international concern. So those are some of the things that are going to be of international concern. So most of the times these theoretical aspects, they bring things that you can relate to what is really happening in the space. So the numbers are not going to be straightforward. So if at all you don't, these are the things that the examiner expects you to, at least by the time you go to see the paper, you must have attained those. So by the time you don't find yourself, you can't be able to look at tackling new things that were introduced in financial management. You can't be able to do investment decision. You can't be able to advise on financing options, on paying dividends, and other aspects. You can't be able to compute and analyze the results. So those are some of the things. And even when you look at the examiner's remarks, those are some of the things that you are going to find. You may find that the examiner is talking about people not managing their time well, not presenting their work professionally. So I never wanted to go into the examiner's comments as per the different settings, but at least I'm giving you the expectations, because they set these exams based on the expectations that they expect the students to. By the time they really say that we are going to see the paper, they must have attained this. So I don't want to make this video too long, so we are going to look at the relevance relevances of this advanced financial management paper. How important is this advanced financial management paper to the whole CPA course? That will be able to give you a highlight on what are the things that we expect. So the question that we want to understand is how important is this paper? Because we don't just want to have things on the syllabus when we don't actually know their impact on the overall CPA paper. So there are things that we are going to be looking at as far as advanced financial management is concerned that are currently or that are prevailing. We are looking at things that are actually happening in the real life. So we are basically going to be, it's relevant because of those real life scenarios or real life cases that actually exist, and that calls for the student doing a CPA to be able to understand those aspects. Now, when it comes to these issues of corporate restructuring, the topic has been revised slightly, but because we also have corporate restructuring on level 2, that is financial management. So here it has been revised a little bit, but what they are leaving here is there are things that they are leaving out, things to do with mergers and takeover, mergers, acquisitions and takeover, mergers and acquisitions, then takeovers. So those are the things that they are leaving out. So these are some of the things that we are going to be focusing on, and these are some of the things that we see. So these are the things that they have included, and these are things that are actually happening. If we shall look at things to do with, because if you talk about mergers, acquisition and takeover, we shall look at things to do with NC Bank, what happened to NC Bank and the Bank of Africa. We saw they formed the NCBA, but there were two banks, NC Bank and the Bank of Africa. When they joined, they formed the NCBA Bank. We also looked at this Orient Bank was also, it was maybe a takeover because it was totally changed from Orient to something else. So we can also look at issues to do with UTL, Uganda Telecom. There are cases, even though the company was not sold, but it has gone into some restructuring. They are changing from the normal way they used to do things to doing other things. But the UTL, because it had issues, but they are trying now to they are trying to revise the things that they are supposed to be providing, and they are trying to transform it into something. So they are even trying to change most of the things that they are doing from there. So that's one way we could talk about the corporate restructuring, because even the management itself has to be restructured if at all you are trying to bring in something new, if you are trying to change, if at all, if let's say you look at NC Bank and the Bank of Africa, you don't think that they are going to retain all the people, or they retained all the people that were in the NC Bank and the Bank of Africa, because one reason as why you could come together is to be able to enjoy benefits, maybe to cut down costs and others. So some of these costs are not going to be incurred by people coming together. So synergies and other reasons may force companies to actually join hands. Even the other case that could highlight the restructuring was when, of course, you remember when the former CEO of NSSF, Mr. Byalugaba, he did some restructuring whereby he sold some vehicles, company vehicles that were in different branches. They were all sold off because most of the times you find that some of these assets, they are there, but they are not actually generating money. So it was seen that most of these branches, the upcountry branches, had vehicles. And when you have a vehicle, it means they leave alone the cost of the vehicle, but their cost of the drivers, their cost of the fuel, their cost of maintenance, and other servicing costs that you are going to be incurring. So all these costs, when you come up with a strategy of restructuring or of selling off some of the assets, like what the CEO did, to sell off the company assets, the vehicles, those that were in those branches, they were sold off. It's one way of cutting down costs. Because when he came in, he found it unnecessary, of course, to have company vehicles taking being allocated money for servicing, fuel, driver, and other aspects that were not, in his opinion, they were not required. So he sold off these assets, all the cars, all the vehicles that were there, and these different branches, and that's one way. That's some of the kind of restructuring that we may talk about. So we need to understand restructuring, because we will find a question. The question may not be directly on restructuring. The question may be bringing in scenarios that are related to the companies that we know, and they are going through the same process. Maybe they are merging, maybe they are buying them out, or they are selling their shares. So that's one way how this paper is relevant, because we need to understand these aspects because they are practically existing in the economy. Then the other reason as to why this paper is relevant is the fact that the need to finance huge investments, or we can call them big ticket projects, forcing companies into debt. Of course, when you look at things to do with analyzing the debt finance, you will also be in position to get knowledge on on things to do with gearing and the cost of debt. So it will be a little bit harder for you if at all you don't have the financial aspects of how we can be able to get the cost of debt, the cost of equity, depending on how the organization is going to be financing these big ticket investments. So these are going to be basis, or they are going to be key. And normally students, they always confuse themselves with things to do with ungearing and gearing. And we shall see some of these aspects we will be able to understand, because the question will also be there. So you have to understand how to ungear or how to regear, because these are some of the things that are not going to miss out. And sometimes they bring it as part of any question, maybe as part A, then maybe it can also come in section A. It comes as part A, then maybe another question that can come in. Like if you look at the December 2022, we had issues to do with corporate restructuring, where you had to get the cost of capital by trying to gear and regear, or gearing and ungearing. So we shall look at some of those different aspects. So the need to finance those big investments, they call for the knowledge of financial management. Then the other concern is basically with the current shift. The current shift to international trade. So you see, even the coffee we produce here, we can be able to export it. So the need for international trade, or the current shift in the operations or in the economic way of life. So the moment you get into the aspects of international trade, there are other things that you are going to be looking at. One of the things that you may look at, as far as an economy being looking at the international trade aspect, you'll find things to do with foreign exchange risks. So we shall talk about hedging of risks, hedging of interest rate. We also have interest rate risks, because we find that most of these companies that are coming in our country, you find most of them, they are South African companies. They bring the capital from outside and they bring and invest it in our economy. If they are banks, those like Stanbic, they are part of Standard Group, South Africa. So these companies, they need to manage. At the end of the day, when they are operating here, they need to manage the money they got from their head offices. And we need to be looking at how they are going to be doing the kind of reporting, the kind of risk in terms of foreign exchange losses and gains, in terms of the interest rates and other aspects. Because if these companies, they are coming as branches or as subsidiaries of the group that is overseas, then it means they are going to be sending money or goods, whichever item they are dealing in, from their head office to the branch. So that will call for different risk, or there are different activities that are going to be involved. Then we also have things to do with the political risk, and it also has become critical. So the examiner is heavily pronouncing in the syllabus these aspects. So we need to focus mainly on things to do with hedging of forex or foreign exchange, and also hedging against interest rate risks. We saw it in December 2022. There was 2 questions that had those 2 elements. And these items, they are mainly used in foreign exchange or forex businesses. But of course, we know that hedging is a little bit different, and it's a bit easy under financial management, since it has both the theory and then the computations. And that's why we want to look at specifically how we can be able to hedge the interest rate risks and other aspects to do with forex or foreign exchange. So, as I said, we have the theory and also we have the computations. So there is no way you are going to ignore these computations, because most of the businesses, they are importing products, they are importing raw materials, they are exporting their produces. And by so doing, we are going to have things to do with foreign exchange issues. And we need to understand how we can be able to tackle that. So that's another relevance of us understanding this, because the things that we are going to be doing here, they are applicable in the real life situations. So, and most of these things you find them in section B. Then the other that we can maybe conclude with is studying corporate governance. Corporate governance is just how things are managed, how the business is managed, basically. And it is important because corporate governance is cited in the collapse of different companies. If businesses are not going to be managed well, we've seen some banks collapsing. And we shall look at some of the businesses that collapse. We have things like Enron. These were companies. Greenland Bank. These were Ugandan banks that collapsed. Then we have also international companies that also collapsed, like Barings Bank. It's one of UK, Britain. So it is an issue of it's an international concern, whereby if organizations are not managed well, if the activities within the organization are not managed well, then it can lead to the collapse of different companies. And we've seen this happening. So we want also to look at the reasons as to why students fail this paper. Why students fail paper 15, CPA paper 15, that is advanced financial management. We want to cite out some of the things that have been communicated from the examiner's point of view, but also from the comments, because we have, as you know, that we have these comments. You can download them from the Institute of Certified Public Accountants website. As you are downloading question papers, you can also download comments of what the examiners have seen from the different students that they have marked. They also give the overall performance, and they also look at what happened. They try to explain if the pass rate has been poor, why are we having so, or what brought this pass rate to actually be a bit lower. So want to cite out some of the things that are going to help us understand from the start that at least these are the things that are making people to fail, as from the examiner's point of view, on why students fail. And also we try to give out a detailed, a summarized overview of what we are going to be covering as far as advanced financial management is concerned. So it is going to be like an overview of the syllabus. We know we have the syllabus, we have the detailed syllabus as provided for by the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Uganda, but we want to give a breakdown of how we are going to be talking about some of these aspects. We are going to start with which topic, and we are going to end with which topic. So there is a strategy that we want to, there is a pattern that we want to look at, basing on what the remarks of the examiners are, or what causes the students to fail. At least we start by resolving the things that make students fail, then we'll be able to maneuver through our syllabus. We need to understand why students fail this paper. These are some of the things that the examiners highlighted that make students fail this paper. One is failure to read and effectively understand the requirements of the question. So if you can't interpret, because as I said, 80% of these questions are going to be calling for your analysis, quantitative analysis. So if you can't read the question and you understand what the examiner wants you to do, automatically you are going to actually fail, because you are going to be answering in your own way. So if you don't understand, or if you don't evaluate to see what the question requires you to do, it will be one of the ways that you'll find yourself not passing the paper. 2, poor time management. Because most of the times you find the student is going to be focusing on, let's say, the student is going to be focusing on some questions or some section. Someone is spending most of his time in section A, which is one question carrying 50 marks. And you know the pass mark is 50, so by all means, if you concentrate in one section, there are very, very minimal chances of you passing that section, passing everything. You know, computations, even if you are good at computations and at the same time you are good at theory, sometimes these arithmetical errors, instead of adding this, you subtracted, maybe you wrote. So some of those arithmetic errors that can cause someone not to score. So if you try to focus in one area, thinking that you can maximize everything, if you manage to maximize the marks, you will be getting 50%. So you will be marking yourself out of 50. So that's one way of wasting time, or where poor time management can be seen. The other is the fact that someone does poor question selection. You do one, you know part A, part B you don't know, but you spend more time analyzing part B. By the time you reach to the other parts that you know of different questions, you have already exhausted. You are tired because you over-concentrated your effort on the things that you actually don't know. So you better start with the questions that you know. These I can spend the least time possible, and at the same time I can be able to get the maximum points. So if you try to over-concentrate on few questions and also attempting less than the required, balance off the questions that are required. If they want you to attempt 3 questions in total, make sure you have done all the 3 questions in total. The other is the examiner has also complained about inadequate preparations. Inadequate preparations of students. Inadequate preparations in the sense that, because they expect at least someone should complete 80% of the syllabus. So you have not completed 80% of the syllabus, and you've not even been attempting numbers, because we say these numbers are quantitative analysis. They require you to be doing some computations on your own, leave alone what you have gotten from the lectures that you have attended to. But you also have to practice on your own to be able to judge yourself that you have actually understood what the lecturers have covered. So make sure that you at least get 80% of the syllabus, and not getting the notes alone, but also trying it on your own. When you finish a topic like this, make sure you go through the topic to see whether you have actually grasped the concept. Because if you walk through, if we take maybe a simulation, we walk through the question, I will be the one to, or the tutor will be the one to analyze the required. So by the time you go through these past paper numbers, you will be able to analyze the questions on your own, and that will help you to assess yourself whether you have understood that particular topic or not. So preparation, it shouldn't be at looking at completing all the student. Like 80% or 70% of the syllabus, but you know at least 65% of what you have studied. So adequate preparation. So those are some of the things that you can tell that if this person has actually, based on what the pattern of the pass rates have been, because these are as per the remarks, what made this percentage of those who have passed and differ from those who have failed. Why maybe this sitting we have registered very many people who have passed. This sitting maybe we have not got more people as we expected. So these are some of the general aspects related maybe to finance. Others, they are personal, but the general aspects, these are some of the things that we can talk about. So let's now look at the detailed, of course, the detailed syllabus. We have the detailed syllabus from the institute. You can download that from our Telegram channel, and the link is on the same channel. So we have the link here. You can go to the about section of the Telegram channel, you download whichever source you need, past papers, solutions, syllabuses, and other different courses that are related to accounting and finance. So let's see how we are going to be attempting these numbers, the syllabus. So overview of the syllabus, how we plan to handle the syllabus. Syllabus overview. So we are going to look at corporate governance. Corporate governance. Of course, corporate governance and ethics. When we are done with that, we shall also do some review on ratios. Ratios cut across. On level 2 is the same way we are going to learn the same ratios here. So we shall have to do some review on ratios. We start with the things that we know. Review on ratios, then Islamic finance also. Then we shall have things to do with financial markets, financial market theories and financial securities. We shall also look at capital budgeting decision. This is the investment decision. We shall also look at the dividend policy. We shall go to portfolio theory. This one is a bit detailed. On level 2, we looked at something that was basic, but here it's going to be a little bit detailed, portfolio theory. Then we shall also look at the CAPM, capital asset pricing model. The CAPM, or what we call the capital asset pricing model. We shall also look at corporate restructuring, business valuation. Of course, this business valuation has been removed. This one was removed. So the business valuation part of it will remain the other side. This was removed. So we shall just look at the corporate restructuring. So we shall also look at derivatives. Derivatives, where basically we shall focus on hedging method. We have also multinational and international trade. Multinational and international trade. Then we have international markets. Can conclude maybe with the international markets. So they seem to be a little bit small, but they are very detailed. Like for capital budgeting decision, we shall understand what a national NPV and an international NPV. Like the NPV for a local company is totally different from the NPV of an international company. So we shall look at how we'll be able to compute those different investment decisions, as we shall see. So that's basically for the learning outcomes and things to do with the course syllabus. You can actually look at the detailed syllabus. If you get the detailed syllabus from our Telegram channel, the link is in the about section of this same YouTube materials, and also be able to access the different information that we share on a daily basis from that point of view. So the next is going to be a kickstart for the different tutorials, and we shall basically start by looking at the ratios, financial performance of the firm. We look at these ratios. We are basically going to be focusing on the revision, because we have gone through the different aspects to do with ratio analysis. And if you want maybe to go through the quick, we have some or different tutorials that are on the previous financial management on level 2. So you can check out this same channel, CPA Cafe Charles. This is the channel that has lecture videos over 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. These are lectures, full lectures on all level 2 and level